We have a quorum, so we will get started. And for today, I will do the Mihi whakatau and also the Karakia, so I will start now. Nō mai haere mai, ki te rere nā mihi nui, ki tēnei hui mō te whakawhanake waka, kia koutou nai konihira, i te kai whakahare, nā kai mahi, ne te mihi maiha, ki kone matu, ki te whakarongo, ki te kōrero, ki te wānanga, kia koutou katoa. And the Karakia today is about being calm. And as we approach Easter, I guess it is a calm time. So it's kia hora te marino. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pono mo tu roana, kia urahi mātato i te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tato i a tato katoa. Kia ora.
Odi order.
So I hope I passed muster, Craig. So thanks for that. So the apologies that we have received from Timatanga Yvette, Councillor Lewis, who is on other duties today. We haven't been advised of any conflicts of interest. We have no public forums or deputations and no extraordinary or urgent business. But at the top of the meeting, I would just like to make mention of an issue coming out of the council meeting yesterday, where it was noted that the air quality work will be transferred from the Natural Environment Committee to this committee. This committee yet to be named. Where air sits in that, I'm not sure. The changes that will be required to be made will be the terms of reference for both committees, and as said, the change in the name of that committee. So just to note that at the start of this meeting. Thank you. No notices of motion, as I've said, so we'll go to the minutes. The unconfirmed minutes of the Transport and Urban Development Committee for the 3rd of March 2022 have been included in the agenda. Are there any matters of accuracy around those minutes that any councillor would like to comment on? Thank you, Juliet. So there's agenda item 7.1. And the motion is that the Transport and Urban Development Committee confirm the minutes of the Transport and Urban Development Committee held on the 3rd of March. There are no additions or alterations. Could I please have 2 hands up so that we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Edge to move that. And we have another hand. Sorry, and Councillor Farm to second that. So as mentioned, if you're in favour, you don't need to say anything. If you're against, put your hand up. There is nobody against that, so that motion is passed. Now moving to report items. Item 8.1, Transforming Public Transport Work Programs Report, is going to be introduced. It's on page 14 of your agenda. It's going to be introduced by Stuart Gibbon. So Stuart, thank you.
Kia koutou. So I'll take the report as read. Some key things to cover this afternoon. I'll start at the top of the list with the zero emissions bus fleet. So we've completed an order of a further 16 buses based on councillors' decisions earlier this year to fund that for the next 2 years. And we have 6 Euro 6 diesels also, low emission diesel also ordered. The funding enabled us to get 12 Euro 6 diesels. However, in the current situation with COVID and supply chains, it's becoming increasingly difficult to source diesel chassis for the New Zealand market. So in our negotiations with our operator, we've agreed that we would continue to sweat 6 existing vehicles for another a year or so to enable council the opportunity in year 3 to change those to be EVs rather than low emission diesel vehicles. And that aligns with council's desire to accelerate, if you like, the transition of our fleet to zero emissions. So that's a good outcome in challenging times. There's been a change based on council decisions yesterday for the item relating to bus routes 17 and 28. So council have considered that item yesterday at a full council meeting and approved progressing that to detailed design and implementation phase. So that's great news for the community. So the team will now work on the detailed design of those service changes, finalise our single stage business case approvals process in the Whakamutunga, order some vehicles and crack into delivering those services early in the new year. COVID disruptions continue to be an issue for public transport in Canterbury and indeed across the nation at the moment. In Christchurch in particular, we are experiencing a number of missed trips due to driver availability as a number of our drivers are either isolating because family members have COVID or they have COVID themselves. For this week, to give you some context, on Monday, we missed 8.4% of trips. But yesterday it was only 2.2. The peak that we've seen at this stage is just under 15% of trips. So we're continuing to monitor that with operators. And if we need to, we may revert to a Saturday timetable. But at this stage, the trend seems to be getting better. So it will be good to avoid having to move to a Saturday timetable. In the meantime, we are making sure that any trips that do not run are communicated through our real-time information system to customers as soon as we know, so that when they engage with our service, they understand what services are running and what services aren't. On the 1st of April, we implemented the 50% fare reduction initiative that was announced by government in the middle of March. So that's now been running for 14 days. So for the first week in the first week in April, we saw a 4.8% increase in patronage compared to the last week of March. It's very, very early days yet to sort of read anything into this, noting, of course, we are experiencing disruption on our network as well, which will be influencing people's travel decisions. So we would expect to see some more meaningful data after a month's worth of engagement with the 50% fare reduction. But it is encouraging to see in that short period of time a 4.8% increase in patronage. PD Futures, so we've been doing quite a bit of work in this area. Route 1728, as I mentioned, was a key service deliverable out of the PD Futures work program that ECAN and its partners have committed to in this long-term plan period. I just wanted to highlight in this report the progress that we've made so far on this investment program. There's a number of initiatives that have been delivered and things that I've been working on. For example, a key component of PD Futures was to deliver more express services for the outer districts. And so the Waimakariri Express, as you know, was implemented last year. We've got 2 of 3 planned express services out of Lincoln now operational into the city. Route 3 was planned to be uplifted to 10-minute all-day frequency, 7 days a week, and that was implemented last year. Route 1728, as we've just talked about, and we'll commence planning for the Hallsmore catchment and Route 7 service reviews later this year to prepare for that upcoming detailed service review, which is a significant task. As you'll know, the Hallsmore catchment is the fastest growing area in Christchurch at the moment, so a lot of work needs to go into understanding how to service that growing community. We've implemented the real-time information system, the first phase of that, and we've started our work on the next phase, which is intersection priority and exploring headway management. Just to be clear on what that means, so headway management is ensuring that when we maintain a frequency between buses of 10 minutes, that we can maintain that 10-minute gap. So that's what headway management is about, to ensure the reliability of the service. We've implemented the under 19 change to the fares, and the annual plan will see some decisions made on the next investments and fare changes. So a significant amount of work's gone into the PD Futures implementations at the moment. Something that's not in the paper, but possibly Jesse will talk about later, is some decisions recently been made by Greater Christchurch Partnership to investigate an accelerated PT Futures investment program. So that's a new piece of work that will go onto our work program, and we'll need to reprioritise some tasks to enable staff to focus on that important aspect. As you can imagine, COVID's having a significant impact on financials at the moment. Patronage was originally forecast when we did the LTP to be at 20% pre-COVID numbers, but currently it's at 40% down on pre-COVID numbers. So that's a substantial reduction in fare revenue. And as you'll be aware, Whakamutunga are providing 51% of the offset costs for that lost fare revenue at the moment through till June. I'm going to stop there and invite any questions.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Just a gentle reminder to councillors that this is this time now is for clarification. Any questions of clarification? Ian McKenzie.
No. Well, mine isn't a question; it's a comment. So I'll come back to me, Peter.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you. Kia ora, Stuart. Just on the express buses, when we went through the long-term plan nearly a year ago now, there was discussion around having an express bus from one of the Christchurch city suburbs, and Sumner was one that was mooted, but wasn't necessarily, would need to be some sort of assessment of which would be the most suitable or beneficial. And that I thought that had been approved, but we don't seem to have had that discussion about one of those express routes more recently. So I'm just wondering where that's at, or have I remembered wrong?
Yeah, so there is funding in this current long-term plan to explore further express services. The timing for that work is for year 2 of the annual plan, so we haven't invested any time in that at this stage. Noting that there is considerations of deferring that work as part of the annual plan process, so that'll be talked about further, I would imagine, in May.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just clarify on that? So there was rates were attributed to that for this year just gone, but it was never intended that it would start until next year. Is that what I'm hearing?
It was planned in the budgets to commence for work to start on that in year 2. So I don't believe these rates are collected for it this year. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I've got the wrong memory then. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Phil.
Thank you, Peter. My first question is one for clarification, and I have a more general question later too, if I may. So thanks, Stuart. You referred to infrastructure priority before as some work that's been worked on. I just wonder if you could just explain, in fact, how that will work, given the infrastructure that we have.
Yeah, sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. So in PD Futures, it's a combined investment program of both service uplift provided by Environment Canterbury and infrastructure improvements provided by the territorial authorities. And so the main areas of infrastructure improvement accomplish bus lanes on key corridors, intersection priority using the real-time information technology that we've recently implemented with Christchurch City Council, and information provision, again, using the real-time information system that we've provisioned with Council. So at the moment, we've commenced investigations into intersection priority. So we'll be hopefully implementing a pilot of that on one intersection later this year to test that out and learn from that pilot, and then identify which intersections over the city, Greater Christchurch, over a prioritised period of time, we will apply that technology to. In terms of bus lanes, you might recall that Christchurch City have concluded recently consultation on Lincoln Road, bus priority lane, and Whakamutunga will be doing work on the state highway component of that corridor through to Horswell. And those two components of bus lane priority are scheduled to be implemented in year 4, so that's 2024. And our Route 7 service review around that Horswell area will encompass the communities out that way in preparation for considering service uplifts to align with that bus lane improvement.
Thank you very much for clarifying that, Stuart. Just in addition, could you just remind us in connection with Brown Street that Whakamutunga are doing and the bus lane there, have we got a potential date for that work to be done or even started?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, Phil. I'd need to go and find that out.
That's okay. Well, yeah, just part of the system. Thanks very much, Stuart.
Thank you. So we'll go to Grant and then Tane.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions about page 16, item 13 and item 17. And I just wonder, have we organised sort of a special communications program to encourage bus usage, taking advantage of this 50% and also the tertiary education communication as well?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, our promotional activity for the fare reduction scheme from government is going to commence in May. We've made that decision deliberately because we are experiencing service challenges at the moment and didn't really want to exacerbate that issue by encouraging too many people to engage with a service that's not running its full potential. So that's commencing in May. You might have seen some promotions in various medias from government in April. So they have done some early promotions of the fare across the country, and they do have some plans to do further promotions nationally. And so we are going to be augmenting or complementing the promotional activity that government is doing for that initiative. But our specific promotional information will commence from May.
Thank you.
In terms of the tertiary concession, so the team are working hard on developing that concept at the moment, ready for a July implementation. So right now we're engaging with the tertiary institutes to work through how we will work with them and how they will provision the concession to their students. So when we're ready to start communicating that, when we've got a finalised proposition to be able to communicate, we'll probably start doing that, I would say, in June.
Right, thanks very much.
Councillor Apanui.
Good afternoon, Stuart. Just wondering if the 4% uptake, what the ratio is between existing users coming back and new users being excited to use the network. If you've got that detail, I understand it's only been 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tony, I don't have that level of analysis available.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Phil.
Thanks, Peter. My general question is in relation to the work plan on page 19, Stuart. And thank you for that. It's very clear in terms of the whole all the programs of work that are being done, and it's huge. I appreciate that. On page 19, there's a reference to the work that the community engagement and consultation team have done, and like Route 17 and 28 was an excellent example of that. And then on page 20, we have the reference group and customer panel structure, and that's been delayed. And I can understand it being delayed for resource reasons, but I'm just wondering if there might be potential to have sort of some interdisciplinary work done with community engagement, say, and the public transport team, and if there might be this might be a potential way of sort of achieving that reference group. An example, just as an example, when we were doing the consultation, Councillor Southworth and myself met a group from Age Concern who were public transport advocates. So they're already there. So I'm just wondering about that potential for sort of joining up those pieces of work, Stuart.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, the community engagement and customer experience team already have good relationships with a wide range of community interest groups. But what I can do is take that suggestion through to the team and see what they can do with it.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Stuart.
much, Stuart.
Okay, Stuart, I think we're finished with you on this item, and we'll move to the motion. So if I could get somebody, I'll get the motion put up first. Christina or Juliet? Juliet? So there's the motion there that the Transport and Urban Development Committee received the Transforming Public Transport Work Programme report. Have a mover and a seconder, please. So we've got Councillor Ian McKenzie and Tumu Tayo Cranwell have moved and seconded that. So
No, Peter, I haven't moved or seconded it.
Oh, you haven't?
I want
Okay.
to talk. I remember
Yes.
I wanted to do something.
And I haven't forgotten.
So you need to find another mover.
So are you happy to move that, Phil?
I'm happy to move that recommendation.
And Yayan, are you happy to second that?
Aye. Thanks, bye.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to general discussion on this. If there's any questions arising out of our general discussion here, we will note those, Catherine Harbrow and Stuart, and we will get back to council outside this meeting. So go to you, Ian.
Yeah, no, thanks, Peter. Look, and this isn't a criticism of Stuart's, as usual, very full report. But it seems to me that the chairs of this committee, and in fact probably some other committees, need to be asking for the financial updates as to how, not just how we're progressing with our work program, but how that work program is fitting against our budget and any other changes that are occurring. And Stuart has quite rightly informed us and warned us that patronage is way down, that if this continues, that it's likely to put huge strain on our reserves, and that some service deliveries, as he's already noted in answers to the councillors this afternoon, may be postponed or delayed because of budgetary constraints. Now, without giving us the updated relevant financial data, it seems to me we're only getting half the story. And the real danger of that is that we end up with a culture of wanting to spend money and demand delivery without actually being held accountable for whether we're operating within budget, given the changing circumstances. And it seems to me that we need, as a council, we need to lift our game on this. Otherwise, we're going to get caught out very significantly with budget blowouts and deficits, which will then have to be funded. And that's not. And given that we're already going for a 24% rate rise in our annual plan to our ratepayers, to me, this is an irresponsibility we need to rectify pretty urgently.
Thank you, Ian. And as noted in a previous discussion, this is a reasonable point that you've made here, and that we will get to this, not in this meeting, and I'm not seeking any clarification about what you've spoken about in this meeting, but we will get to this. Councillor Clearwater.
Thank you, Peter. Look, I'm happy to move the recommendation that we receive this report. I think it's an excellent report. And just referring though, and you've already made reference to the fact that there has been, that the Audit, Finance and Risk Committee already receive a lot of finance information about transport, and it's about how we I guess align that information. But I don't think that should detract from the excellence of this report in terms of the information that is in it for us. Like I noticed the report's headed Transforming Public Transport, and I have already commended and will emphasise that how excellent the pages on the work plan are to give us that information. And clearly the results are showing, and I don't give praise lightly, I think, but clearly these results are showing that indeed the transformation of public transport is actually starting to happen, particularly because of the challenges that we have had with COVID-19. And so, you know, I think the whole point, and like a good example, well, there's lots of examples of all of the excellent work that has already been completed. So I am just very happy to move this recommendation.
Thank you. Chair Huey.
Thank you very much, Chair Scott. I would like to support this motion. It's a very good report. It's absolutely excellent and well done to all the staff working in this area, and you're doing a fine job. But I have to say that I endorse the technical comments made by earlier speaker, Councillor Ian McKenzie, about the financial information that we're currently not getting. However, there are ongoing discussions with staff, and indeed the CE has set this as one of her priorities. 4 priorities she's got, this is one of them. And I'm confident that staff are working on this, but we need to get this sooner rather than later. So I'm confident that staff are taking that on board and that we will get there. So thank you very much for this report. I think it's a fantastic report.
Look, thank you for that, Chair. Listen, last comment, Ian, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, it was really in a response to some of Councillor Clearwater's comments, in that he's saying that he thinks that we're already seeing the benefit of investment in public transport. I haven't seen anything to give me any confidence that we are getting a benefit from that to date. I look forward to hearing that information, but I'm not getting it at this stage.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, with that ends the discussion on this matter. So I'll put that motion that we've already seen, and it was moved by Councillor Clearwater and seconded by, sorry, Timatanga Cranmore, do you want to, as the seconder, do you want to speak to this?
Oh, it's all been covered, Peter. Support, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, moved by Councillor Clearwater, seconded by Timatanga Cranmore. Lack of hands will be a affirmation. If you show your hand, that's against. And that matter is carried. So thank you, Stuart, for that, and thank you for the debate on that. It was enlightening. Now we move to 8.2, which is integrating urban land use and regional transport work programs. And this item is going to be carried forth by Jess Burgess. So welcome, Jess.
Tēnā koutou. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'll just take the paper as read, as Stuart had for the PT public transport paper. I'll just highlight a few key points for councillors in the paper. So this paper relates to the Integrating Urban Land Use and Regional Transport Work Program, which covers our Canterbury Regional Council, Canterbury Regional Transport Committee, South Island Regional Transport Committee, and the Greater Christchurch Partnership work streams. Just in the key updates to the work program on page 24, 25 and 26, I'll just highlight a couple of key projects that we're working on at the moment in the Regional Transport Committee space is the research into reducing transport emissions, and also the update to the regional transport web pages here at Environment Canterbury. That work's underway, it's progressing well. We've heard back from Research First in terms of the work that they've undertaken on the research into emissions. And we're hoping to bring that through to the next RTC meeting on the 26th of May. And then subsequently to that, we'll be able to bring that through to the Transport and Urban Development Committee, hopefully in June. In terms of some other work that the RTC is working on at the moment, there's a road user charges submission being prepared to go back to the Ministry of Transport. It's been agreed that the chair, Councillor Peter Scott, will sign that submission out. It's due on the 22nd of April. This is a review of the road user charges system. Some of the key points, just to note that in the submission that's going through from the Regional Transport Committee, the submission emphasises that any sort of piecemeal review of transport funding mechanisms is not really going to result in the outcomes that we're seeking. We need an integrated, holistic review of transport funding with strong consideration of unintended consequences of the shift and appropriate phasing in of new ways of charging. Some of the key considerations, so road user charges should cover costs associated with building, operating and maintaining the road network. Road user charges should include the cost of managing the polluting of the road network, such as particulate matters like copper and zinc deposited on the roads, services from tyre and brake use. So this is a bit of a polluter pays approach. Road user charges should also be distributed to areas where they're collected, so aligning with the regional priorities and spent on the road networks where they're collated, so not in other parts of the country. We shouldn't be using road user charges to fund step changes like reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Fuel excise duty should be used to fund the transition to a low emissions transport network at pace, such as the purchase of low emissions heavy vehicles. And road user charges should be charged to all vehicles irrespective of fuel. So that just sort of gives you a bit of a flavour of where the submission's going. Once that's been signed out by Chair Scott, we'll be able to circulate a copy of that submission to councillors. Another key piece of work that's happening in the Regional Transport Committee space relates to the notice of motion that was put forward at the last RTC meeting. And this relates to the report being provided back to RTC members on the progress of passenger rail in Canterbury. So staff are progressing that work. Staff have engaged WSP Opus consultants to provide some expertise in the rail space to support the discussions and the paper with the RTC members. So it's proposed that we'll provide a bit of an overview of the existing rail network in Canterbury and the key drivers for further considering the role of passenger rail in the region. An overview of the work recently completed, underway or planned in relation to passenger rail in Canterbury. And that includes things like consideration of the mass rapid transit work in Greater Christchurch and some of the other regional spatial planning work as well that we need to consider in the future. The paper will also provide a bit of a high-level commentary on the different types of passenger rail that could be further considered in Canterbury. So that's focusing in on a sub-regional, intra-regional, so within Canterbury, or an inter-regional, so beyond Canterbury and connecting into other regions, passenger service, and what are some of the key considerations for each option. And then also some potential options for how the RTC could progress work on passenger rail, including the key considerations for each option and staff recommendations around that. So that work is progressing. That'll be taken through to the 26th May RTC meeting and discussed there. And so after that meeting, we'll be able to update the Transport and Urban Development Committee as well, hopefully at the meeting on the 2nd of June. Other key things that are happening. So recently, at the end of March, 28th of March, there was a South Island Freight Summit that was held between the South Island Regional Transport Committee chairs and the South Island Regional Chairs Group. That was a really successful summit. We heard from experts in the road, rail and coastal shipping freight spaces. Well attended summit by all who attended. Lots of discussion around how we can make more efficiencies in our network, decarbonising our network, getting freight mode shift, and tackling some of those key freight and supply chain issues that we're experiencing at the present time. Ministry of Transport were one of the key presenters at the Freight Summit, and they are releasing a national freight and supply chain strategy for consultation, hopefully this month. So the purpose of the summit was really to, provide the evidence base and the education to all involved around some of the freight and supply chain issues that we're facing and how we can influence that in the future. So influencing that freight and supply chain strategy will be critical. Shifting gear a little bit just into the Greater Christchurch Partnership space. So the spatial plan work continues, and that's off the back of the Greater Christchurch 2050 work as well. Greater Christchurch 2050 hopefully should be completed by the end of next month. and through to the GCP, the Greater Christchurch Partnership Committee after that, and then back through to this council after that as well. The spatial planning work is continuing. The evidence base is being collated for that work. Currently looking at urban form options and evaluating those, and there's a further briefing to councillors later today on that. Just one thing to note, councillors signed off the Urban Growth Partnership Committee, endorsed that yesterday at council meeting, and also appointed our members from the Greater Christchurch Partnership to that Urban Growth Partnership Committee, namely Chair Jenny Huey, Councillor Phil Clearwater and Councillor Grant Edge. So the first meeting of that Urban Growth Partnership Committee is on the 13th of May, and the staff are currently working on the agenda with our ministerial officials, and really look forward to that first meeting. And it's a significant milestone for the partnership and for the partners here in Greater Christchurch. Lastly, just on this work program update, noted on paragraphs 13 and 14 of the paper, page 26 is around the Greater Christchurch Transport Plan and Greater Christchurch Transport Investment Program. Stuart mentioned before some work that we're doing around PT Futures, Public Transport Futures, and accelerating that work. That's to feed into the Greater Christchurch Transport and Investment Program, which is broader than just PT. It includes active modes of transport as well as things, other programs like travel demand management. And it's about us accelerating our investment in our transport network so that we can decarbonise our network into the future and achieve some of those emissions reduction targets that we're seeking. So the GCP has endorsed us proceeding with the Greater Christchurch Transport Plan and Investment Program, the scope of which was put to GCP on Friday, and it will include enhanced travel demand management as well. The scope of the work so has been broken into two key stages. The first stage being a strategic policy overview, and that's reviewing and comparing some of the outcomes and objectives from relevant strategies and policy documents at a national, regional and sub-regional level, and then aligning those and identifying any potential gaps. Then the next step will be around agreeing on some outcomes and objectives at a strategic level and giving effect to the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan Transport Strategic Direction as well. Secondly, in terms of the investment program, we need to consolidate a picture of what current investment direction looks like, and then undertake a high-level review of that current direction against those agreed outcomes and objectives, and identify any sort of short-term gaps, which is work we've got underway at the minute, and also those opportunities, as I mentioned, around enhanced travel demand management. And then aiming to have undertake some targeted stakeholder engagement on that and have a draft plan ready and prepared for GCP around July, August, and through to have it largely completed by September, October this year, so as to engage with central government to influence budget 2023 and also any revisions to the government policy statement on land transport. So another big piece of work, and the team's been stood up for that. It's in-kind resource across the partners. A lot of work has already been done by Christchurch City Council staff in developing a Christchurch transport plan, so we're building off that. And a lot of stage one is really about collating a lot of the information that we already do have available to us, just packaging that up into a single plan and single investment program so that we can engage with central government in that regard, to hopefully secure any additional investment in our transport network. So those are probably the large main updates from myself, Mr. Chair, just in terms of those key pieces of work that are underway. And I know, yes, later on this afternoon, we've got a briefing on the spatial plan and MRT work with councillors and a bit more detail on the Freight Summit, and also just to follow up a couple of comments around the minister meeting as well. So look forward to those discussions later on today. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, that's a lot of country you've just covered there, Jess, and there'll probably be some comment, but if we could just concentrate on clarification. When we come to the discussion, if there's something coming out of that we need to talk about, maybe we can hold that over to the workshop and ask some questions there. So has anybody got clarification from Jesse on any of that 8.2. Hands up. You've dazzled them, Jess. Oh, there's Nicole. Nicole.
Kia ora, Peter. Kia ora, Jess. That's excellent report. So just a question based on what you're saying about the Christchurch Transport Plan. It implies, I'm just getting clarification of how our public transport network fits into the Christchurch Transport Plan. Is there implication that they are going to be influencing or controlling the design of our network, or how does that all fit together?
Okay, I'll see if I can tackle that question. Stuart might want to jump in as well on any answer. But look, I guess the transport plan goes beyond just public transport. It's about active modes of transport as well. It's also looking at our travel demand management and other initiatives. It also starts to look at other policy interventions that we can start to shift people's behaviours in terms of their current transport modes. So addressing mode shift. The public transport side of things, so we've got our PT Futures program in play that councils have agreed, the partners have agreed to, which is the 10-year program of investment in both infrastructure and service delivery. That is built on in terms of this Greater Christchurch Transport Plan as a component part of that. We've been asked to accelerate, also look at accelerating the investment in that to meet government expectations in terms of and also to reduce our emissions by virtue of reducing our vehicle kilometres travelled. So the transport plan is really about bringing all of this information that we already have in play together into one document. So we're not constantly referring to a mode shift plan and a PT Futures program and this and the Cycleways program over here. It's bringing all of that information together into one space, talking to our emissions targets and other goals through that, and giving effect to the spatial plan, strategic direction of the spatial plan and urban form considerations. So, and then the investment program coupled with that will be a clear articulation of the investment that we're seeking to put into Greater Christchurch over the next 10 years. So you'll see some of the short, medium and longer term initiatives within that. And as I said, PT Futures is something that we're looking to ways of accelerating that. We've already provided some information through to council on that and through the partnership. And we're also looking at some of the even more short-term 1 to 2 year type initiatives that we could seek further investment from central government on. So packaging that up with our cycleways and other initiatives as well is critical, and so that we have one plan to speak to central government with. And that's been the criticism, I think, as we've gone through this over the last few years, is that we're not speaking to one plan, we're speaking to multiple plans. I don't know if Stuart's got anything to add to that, any other key points, but that's perspective on it.
Thanks, Jesse. Just to respond to the specific point about planning and design for PT. So Christchurch City transport planning staff and ECAN staff have worked together on that transport plan. And as Jesse said, it leverages off a whole bunch of work that we've collaboratively done over the last few years. It's important to recognise that in Greater Christchurch we have a built environment, and that built environment determines a lot of the key transport corridors that are in place now and will continue to be used as key transport corridors in the future, which is what PT leverages to deliver high frequency services. So no, it's not that Christchurch or any other TA is taking over designing our PT network. We are working together to make sure that whatever we collectively design and deliver makes sense for the urban environment that we have now and going forward.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks both.
Thank you, Nicole. I don't know if we want to go too much further down this track. John. Councillor Sunkel. Yes.
Sorry, just changing screens. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jesse, for that. And all the way through this conversation, you've absolutely emphasised greater city partnership and the like. I do hear at times some of our councillors, and I do hear some of our colleagues over at Hereford Street talk about Christchurch Transport. And so for me, it is that co-joined up. It is greater city. It's not just what happens within the 4 avenues. And I think just at times some of us need to just be very careful about how we express what that transport system looks like, and not to alienate others and sort of push them out. So it's just in the wording I hear occasionally.
Are you looking for clarification on something, John, or are you making a comment?
I have no idea. I'm confused. I'll move out.
Look, I think we'll bring you back once we put the motion. So thanks, Jess, for this, and also for Stuart for your input on this. I think we'll go to the motion if we can get Juliet to put that up on the screen, and then we can have a discussion about it. So the motion is in front of you. Receives the integrating urban land use and regional transport work program report, and I'm taking it, Councillor Edge, that you're going to move that. And can we have a seconder, please? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Southworth. All those no hands up means aye, and hands up means nay. So that motion is passed. Now, discussion on that. John, do you want to make that point again, please? Maybe not. I've got a point that I'd like to make here or put into the mix here. It seems like there's a lot of work in this program and across the public transport and the planning in the UD areas, including the RTC stuff that we're looking at, that rail. And we keep asking the same handful of people to do the work. I'm pretty sure that we're not employing more people to do this, and it's just how much more we can do and how fast we can do it, noting that the GCP stuff has been squeezed up to 6 years from 10 years, and just how much pressure that is going to bring to bear in terms of the transport space. So that's a comment that I'd just like to make and leave on the table. Do we have anybody else that wants to say anything? Okay, then I'll put, have I put the motion?
Yes, you've already put it in.
Okay, sorry, I got that back to front, but there we are. Okay, that's been passed, so we'll go to 8.3, which is the Metro User Survey results, and I will note that Thomas, McNaughton and Jeremy are going to present this. Hi, Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora koutou. So we'll take the report as read, but we have a short presentation to highlight some of the key insights we've taken. Can you see the slides?
Yes, thanks, Thomas.
Yep, can see those.
Cool. Thank you. So this is on the annual Metro customer survey results. As context to the survey, this is a snapshot we do once a year. We've been doing it for quite some time. Its purpose is twofold. So firstly, it informs levels of service tracking. So it's giving the customer lens in terms of experience, performance. But it's also really important for providing some really hard data in terms of informing customer-centric planning and prioritisation, which we'll get into later in the talk. I'll pass on to Jeremy to talk about the levels of service.
Ora koutou. Are you going to bring up that slide, Thomas?
I shall.
That would be helpful. Right. So these are the high level results of the surveys, and there are measurements that are our levels of service in the long term and annual plans. So the level of service that we are aiming to achieve is 95%, and you can see for each of those 3 areas: Greater Christchurch survey, Metro User Survey, the Timaru Metro User Survey, and we also do one for our Total Mobility User Survey each year as well. We've achieved over the 95% threshold. So we've exceeded our level of service, which we are very happy with. We feel like it reflects and particularly given the challenges that have been thrown at us in the last 2 years. This survey was run over a longer than normal period last year whilst we were amongst the midst of COVID challenges. This is a pretty good outcome for us. We've done a little bit of benchmarking in other regions, and we are just slightly above some of the other regions. So again, we feel pretty happy about that.
So we'll provide some high-level insights on the 3 components of the survey, so Greater Christchurch, Timaru and Total Mobility. So first off, we've got Greater Christchurch. So the survey provides some really useful information in terms of what are the primary factors that determine a positive or negative experience for a customer and how we're performing on those. So this chart here, which you can hopefully see okay, but I'll talk to it anyway, brings it all together in quite a concise way. So basically, if you look left to right, that's saying what are the areas which are of highest priority to customers in terms of what they expect of us. And if you go top to bottom, that's looking at how we're performing on those. So the top right there, we've got the areas that are really important to customers and that we're doing pretty well at. And the main theme here is that this is to do with the helpfulness and attitude of drivers and other staff and just general driving behaviour. So in-person customer service is fundamental to customer experience, and we're doing pretty well there. And personal security during the trip also comes up as something really important to customers, and overall it's got a good response. Moving down, we've got 3 factors where customers are really telling us that they want to see some improvement. So the one most important to customers is how often services run, which of course is much of the conversation that we're having in these PT briefings about improving services. We've also got here about the reliability of services, and Stuart's discussion earlier about further utilising the real-time information tools is a really constructive action we can do to further improve reliability. And we've also got the value for money of the fare. And yes, as you'll be well aware, in recent consultation, we'd be well aware of that on fare options. And of course, we currently have the government-funded 50% off offer. So some good progress on that side.
So in Timaru, we had a very high result again, as we had last year, and there were some slight changes, but the most significant change, well, there are a couple of changes, but one was, as you can see here, the top line shows the number of people who rated 10 out of 10 for satisfied with the service was a pretty significant jump from the previous year, which we're very pleased with. And we believe that that reflects the amenity of the on-demand My Way service, meeting customers' needs. And also, we think that also reflects because the service has been in place for 2 years now, the community has adapted also to some of the change and the new way of engaging with public transport. And so it's the new normal, and they're happy with the new normal. So overall, very pleased with the Timaru service. In terms of feedback on the on-demand service versus the fixed route service, customers are 90% of customers prefer the on-demand service. So these recognising these are current users, but prefer the on-demand service to the fixed route service. 7 or 8% are neutral, and 3 to 4% prefer the fixed route service. So there's a strong groundswell of support from customers, and also we have obviously increased patronage in Timaru, driven by the My Way service. And so total mobility, again, in total mobility, we've had a very high customer satisfaction, as we've had in previous years. The most significant difference between previous years is this slide here, which talks about the main purposes for using total mobility, and our working hypothesis on this, and we're relatively confident in this, is that the reason for that change actually reflects the fact that when we ran the survey 2 years ago, we'd come out of the first COVID lockdown, and people's use at that time was more highly focused on they're only using the service for essential travel, which was more likely to be hospitals or doctors, and a little bit of shopping. So I think, although that is a difference, and you'll see that in the report, it's actually, we don't think it's a material difference in how people are engaging with the service. But overall, the feedback, there's a slightly higher satisfaction from Christchurch total mobility users than there is from Ashburton and Timaru, but it's still very high across the board. Right, so I mean, Stuart's spoken about some of the activities that we have done and are doing. But I think, and it's in the report, one of the things I think that's quite important and that we feel is that we've spent a lot of time laying the foundation for future enhancements to our service. So as we talk about in the report, and Stuart mentioned today, we've implemented our real-time information system, and now so that's something that now we can turn on the traffic signal prioritisation, minimise bus bunching, or allowing headway management. So it's an opportunity for us to build on in the future. We've implemented and are continuing to implement, but our new fleet. So with the new electric fleet, we've got 28 of those at the moment, and as Stuart said, we've placing an order for further 16. All the new fleet have 3 bus bike racks on them. They have USB ports, they have air conditioning. So there's been a significant uplift from a customer experience perspective. We've done work recently from a fares perspective with the 18 year olds getting the child fares. A significant amount of work through the COVID period, just to maintain as high a level of service as possible, which has included the additional cleaning that we've deployed on our vehicles, and also engaging more closely with our operators as our new contracts enable us to do, in things such as our induction training and annual training that's provided to all employees. And then Thomas's team in particular, the customer experience and marketing, have deployed some initiatives late last year and recently from a marketing and customer engagement experience perspective.
Oh, and looking at the year ahead, there are a few things to highlight. First off, of course, with the new ticketing system work, there'll be a lot of really key decisions being made in the year ahead, which of course will have a customer-centric lens. So this report and others will be, really, really important to inform our thinking there. We've talked about the enhancements to the real time to improve the reliability. That'll be really key. Something which has come through a little bit in this research, but more so in other engagement and other community research, has been the need to keep doing more in terms of getting the key messages out there about people's local public transport connections, and basically how to use the metro network. So not sure if Teams will let me show this, but you may have seen this guide around recently. We'll be circulating that really widely over May as part of the 50% activation. So that's basically got everything you need to know to make public transport work for you. And improving the information at bus shelters and some more campaign work on that space. And finally, yes, we're advancing some new strategic thinking on customer experience and marketing. And part of that is the engagement framework, which I talked about for this forum late last year, which is really about sort of building upon information sources like this to get, which is a snapshot, an annual snapshot of how we're doing. We want to get a really continuous flow of customer feedback that we can respond to and learn from throughout the year, as well as improving our understanding of how we can influence perception from potential customers and, of course, past customers, so we can grow the network in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Jeremy. So we'll just go to the hands for clarification. So Councillor Apanui.
Yeah, thanks for the update on the Timaru stuff. It's pretty exciting. Look, this is a bit of a cheeky question, Peter. I hope you don't mind, but it doesn't appear to be too many hands up. Look, the My Way service requires a Class 1 licence and a P endorsement. Is that correct, Jeremy?
It would definitely require a P endorsement. Whether it's a Class 1 licence, I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's below 5.5 tonne, that vehicle, so it should be a Class 1. So if we had more of those running around Christchurch, potentially less drivers would get poached.
Well, I mean, you could draw that hypothesis for a lot of change. I mean, potentially, yes, but potentially, potentially. There's a lot of factors, obviously, that go into smaller vehicles. We did have smaller vehicles on our network previously, on our fixed route services, and though the challenge that we had is that they couldn't be deployed all day, every day on our network because they couldn't carry the right amount of passengers at peak times. So we made a strategic decision that we were better to invest in the larger vehicles because it meant that we didn't have to pay capital for more than one vehicle to cover the same route. An on-demand service is different because you have lower patronage because they're not on your core routes requiring you to move lots of bums on seats at peak times.
Good answer.
Awesome. Cheers.
Councillor Southworth.
Hi. Thank you so much for that. And great to hear we're going to have promotions around connecting with our network in May. And I totally understand the reason not to have done that just yet. So, yeah, good. That's great to see. I've got a few questions. So I just wanted to... I'm really impressed with everything I've seen today, but my job is to home in and ask some of those more tricky questions. So apologies. I know I always do this, but I do think you do a great job. I just wanted... So I've got you here. The first one is that, so looking at the data, the younger group, the 16 to 24-year-olds, clearly have a lower level of satisfaction with our services than those who are in the 65 plus. And I'm just wondering, have we done any work really looking to see what's the reason for that? And my thinking being, and I know we're proposing to change the fares, so hopefully that will help them to be more engaged, but also if we can understand more about what it is that they're not liking about our service at the moment, or they feel isn't so good, we could help to build their commitment and their recognition. Actually, they do receive a good service. And so do we do anything? Have we done anything with that?
So yes, we haven't unpacked this survey so much on that question, but with recent research such as the fare policy research, price is a major part of that. So our focus is on or launching the tertiary discount, which is part of that group, of course, and a huge focus of that is further developing our relationships with the tertiaries. And we've got some really strong connections with the major ones now. And part of the sort of joint commitment of that that pilot is to work together on partnering in promotions. And I fully expect us to have really regular discussions with say the universities, for example, and the student associations on what activations we can do. We've done the basics like orientation activity and such, but there's just so much more potential. And colleagues at CCC are also really keen to get involved on the behaviour change travel planning side of things as well. So yes, our immediate focus is tertiary to make the most of that that opportunity. But yeah, for that age group, it's bigger than that. So we need to do some further work too.
Yeah, and just listening to you there, and so if it's all right to just keep the questions going instead of through you, Councillor Scott. I wonder about the high schools, at the high school, you know, that year 12, 13, because I know that a lot of students get their provisional and then the driving, particularly in more affluent areas. So I just on the back of what you've just said, seems to me there's an opportunity there with those older students at high school as well. Would be really good to get them to stay with the system through their schooling before then coming into whatever they go on to, because not everyone goes on to university. So that's one point. And then similarly, then looking at the feeling safe. So I noticed, for example, so feeling safe, 61% of Christchurch respondent, or the net user survey that's Greater Christchurch, 61% rate 9 or 10 for their feeling safe on their trip, compared with 89% in Timaru. And my sort of sense of things is you would only rate less than 9 if there was something that made you feel less than safe. So even those lower numbers do tell us something. And I wonder, have we done any work looking at breaking that down? Like, is it a particular gender? Are they particular trips? And if so, you know, whereabouts in our network, what times of day? Is there something in the infrastructure? So I know, for example, recently had I received a complaint around the exchange and the lack of security at the exchange. Have we done some investigating to understand where specifically people are finding they're getting sense of feeling unsafe, and who particularly as well, so that again we could actually have a more focused attention on how we can resolve that? And I appreciate some of that may well be would need to go to CCC rather than to us.
We're getting past clarification, Vic, I think. Are you happy that Thomas and you have a conversation around that in-depth stuff?
Yes, I can do that. I have one more question. Which is around something that's not in here, but I know is in the Metro user survey around cash versus Metro card. And this is a question I asked at the Finance Committee, but was told that wasn't the right place, so I'll ask it here. So on the cash and Metro card, been a fairly typically 10% of the passengers use cash, and that's very slightly dropped in this year, I think, in the data. But the percentage of people whose reason for not using Metro card because of cost has gone up, and that's both cost of accessing a Metro card, so it's $15 to start the system with your $10 load, or too expensive to top up with the $10 top up. And I just wonder, and that's increased, that's been increasing over the last 3 years, the percentage of people who are impacted by that. And I notice in paragraph 11, it talks about specifically needing, you know, looking at people who have something very specific that requires more focus. And that to me seems like actually our most vulnerable customers, who for the sake of the $10 top up are being excluded from accessing our most cost effective fares. And I wonder, are we looking at ways that might, to me, a $5 top up would seem like an obvious solution. It's a note, and while we are still a flat paper, and while we have the half price fares at the moment as well, and who knows, that might continue, then you can do a return trip, and certainly children can always do a return trip on just a $5 top up. And in my experience, most people top up $20 or $40 a time because they don't want the faff of having to carry the cash to do it. So it really would only be benefiting or likely to be something that those who are most needing that minimal top up with tackle. So I just wonder if that's something that's been thought about.
As part of the survey, are you asking this as part of the survey report?
Yes, it's in the survey report. Yeah.
So, Stuart, I see your hand up, Stuart. Do you want to respond to this, or are you happy that Thomas or Jeremy respond to it?
Jeremy will be able to respond to that question. I was just going to comment on the question around youth engagement with PT, and as Thomas highlighted, price was a key determinant there. But there was also another determinant, which we've had several engagements with the youth Troper over the last 2 years about PT, and a common theme coming out of youth engagement has been the level of service, so frequency, particularly off-peak in the weekends. That's a time where youth are very keen to travel, and the frequencies obviously in the weekends aren't quite as attractive as they are in the week time. So that'll be another reason for youth marking it down, I suspect. But I'll let Jeremy talk to the top-up question.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you. So we know that we can make changes to our system. So we can make changes to our system, but we know that there will be consequences and unintended consequences. So from my perspective, the council is making a decision in the next couple of months on fee structure, which is likely to have a material impact on whether or not the size of the value of initially doing some investigation to see if it would make a difference, and then implementing some changes. So my advice would be to await the outcome of council's decision on where we land with fares through the annual planning process, and then assess based after that what's the value of. We would want to do some investigation, because, as you say, is it going to make an actual difference reducing it from $10 to $5? Is it going to slow down how many people are going to take notice of that? Do we think so? What are the changes for changing to our ticketing system? Will it slow down the boarding processes materially to annoy other passengers? Will there be a bit of behaviour change associated with that? We would just want to understand enough of that picture before we made the decision.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Vicky. Okay, we'll get you guys to step back now, and we'll put the motion up. Well, there's 3 parts to this motion. If you have in front of you, could somebody put a hand up as a mover and somebody as a seconder? Councillor Southworth moving and Councillor Edge seconding. Is there any further discussion that councillors want to have on this matter? Phil, did you want to say?
Sorry, mine's a ghost hand, Peter.
Okay. All right. There's no one breaking the door down here, so I think what we'll do is we'll put that motion, moved by Councillor Southworth and seconded by Councillor Edge. No hands up being an aye, and hands up being an A. So no hands at all. So that motion is passed. So thank you for that, staff. And obviously the comment that you made at the end there, Jeremy, there's going to be some more opportunity, I think, Councillor Southworth, for discussion around the AP in terms of where we get to with that, because it's a pretty open door still. All right, so that brings us to item 10, am I right?
9, next meeting.
Next meeting. So the next meeting is on Thursday, the 2nd of June, 2022. And before I close out, just to make you aware that Councillor Edge will be the chair in this intervening time. So anything that's urgent can go to Councillor Edge. I'm still there if you need me, but Councillor Edge. Right. I will finish with a Karakia, and then we've got a workshop, I think, starting at past. So we'll stick to the timetable on that. So the Karakia is about suspending the discussion. We've had it before. So ka whakakaria te kōrero ki te tahu o tō tātou Tātou whori, kia tikina anō, a tono wahi, haumi e, hui e, tā.
Ki, aiki.